Hey cakey people, welcome back to another video. Just before we get into this one, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you already subscribed, thank you. Leave me a comment, let me know what you thought. So today we're doing a Profroster tutorial. Now this is how I do my Profroster. Some people do it differently, this is how I do it. So we're starting out with 3 layers of cake and we're putting a row of ganache around the outer edge. So that's the green that you can see on there, and the yellow is the filling. The filling is a buttercream. So the ganache around the edge for me gives me a nice strong lip around the edge that seals in that filling. And you can put whatever you want in the middle. This one happened to be a lemon. Okay, so then we're going to put our last layer of cake on the top there, and then we're going to smooth the lines between. Obviously we've got gloves on, sometimes I do this with a spatula. But I had gloves on, so I used my gloves to just smooth that line. And the next thing we need to do is put a light crumb coat onto the cake. So I'm using the ganache colour that I'm going to be using. And we're just going to smooth that all around. I'm just using the leftovers that's in the piping bag to smooth that on there. And then we're going to use our spatula, our small angled spatula. You can use a large one if that's what you're comfortable with. I personally find a 9-inch is perfect for me. And I get a nice mobility with it. I get into all the nooks and crannies, etc. So this layer is just purely to cover up all the crummies and seal everything in. And it also, we're going to pop this into the fridge for 5 to 10 minutes, and it gives us a nice firm base to work with. Now I've set up my workstation here on top of my turntable. I've got a Perspex board that is the same size as my turntable, so it gives me a good surface, good nice flat surface to work my Profroster around. I've also got a ganache plate that is 0.25 inches larger than my cake. So this was a 6-inch cake, and I've got a ganache plate that is 6.25 inches underneath my cake card. You can see the cake card that the cake sat on top of on the picture here. If you want to know, if you want more in-depth information on how I set up this, see my other videos. There is a video of how I set up for doing a ganache cake. Just ignore the press and seal part for the top plate because we're not using a top plate. I will also make a video for you guys of how I prep for Profrosting, although it's pretty much the same as ganaching. Like I say, I just don't use the top plate. So here we go, we've got our cake all nicely crumb coated. I'm just making sure we don't have any really parts that stand out or anything like that that are going to give us any problems when we come to do the actual Profrosting in a minute. Okay, and then like I say, we're going to pop this into the fridge for 5 to 10 minutes just to firm up. And when you take it back out, you'll have a cake that's much easier to work with. Okay, so here we go. We've got our cake back out of the fridge now. You can see, obviously, it's quite rough and ready at this point. So we're setting our Profroster, and this is a genuine Profroster. The fake ones you get on Amazon and such, they're not as good. So you need a real Profroster. So set your Profroster up to just above the top height. I like to set my top height first before I start doing the sides. So I'm just putting some ganache on the top there, and then I will run my Profroster around the edge. I like to build my layers up. I don't like to go in with a full massive load of ganache or buttercream and then wipe it back. This is a white chocolate ganache that I'm working with here. And that's mostly what I do use. I don't use a whole lot of buttercream. Mostly only use a buttercream if it's multiple colours. So here we go. We can see that top edge starting to come through now, and it's getting sharper as we do each layer. Like I say, I build my layers up. I don't like to go in and do a full load and then swipe it off. It's messy, it's wasteful, in my opinion. Obviously everybody's different, and some cake makers do it that way, and they successfully do it that way. I'm more comfortable building up the layers. I find I get a nice smooth finish. I don't get any imperfections in the cake, and the more you do it, the more you get used to it. It is certainly a tool you need to get used to using. I don't think you'll find straight out of the box that you'll be like, oh yeah, this is the best thing I've ever had. But honestly, the more you use it, the easier it gets. And I love my Profroster. I wouldn't be without it now. I don't know why I waited so long to buy one. Well worth the money. And like I say, definitely get the real one. So again, building our layers up. Make sure when you're rolling that Profroster around the bottom, you always keep it flat to the bottom plate, and that's why this extra acrylic disc around the bottom that you can see that's the same size as my turntable is so important. If you don't have that flat surface to work against, you're working against yourself. You know, you've got no way of leveling it off. And also that ganache disc around the bottom just ensures I get a nice even coat all the way around. And then what we'll do at the end is we'll flip it upside down to take that off, and the cake will be quite firmly set at that point. So you can see we're really building those layers up now. Now, each time I do this, I do use my angled spatula just to wipe clean the Profroster. You can't see it because it's out of shot. At some points when we get further into it, I do fully wash it and start again just to make sure we're not putting any mess back on there. But at this point, because we're building the layers up, we're building the walls, so to speak, of the cake. Here you can see we're getting less and less imperfections each time, and that top square edge is really coming in now. Now, this cake that I was actually doing here was going to go out as this colour, as this ganache cake. Wasn't having any fondant on. I don't do a whole lot of fondant anymore, if I'm honest. It's not something I particularly find that I enjoy as much. I like to do a ganache cake. That's kind of where my cakes are developing to personally. So this tool really does help me get those smooth finishes that I want on my cakes, because they're not having any fondant on, so we don't want any imperfections. So here we are, just going around, building up those layers. You can see that it's really starting to come through. Okay, so once we've done this layer, we are going to put this into the fridge again. Okay, pretty much just for a couple of minutes, 2, 3, up to 5 minutes, just to let it set. And then we're going to go in again with another layer. So here we are, starting again. You can see from this angle quite clearly, the top is not flat. The Profroster will not get your top flat. It is not made for that. And I found that a bit confusing when I first got it, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? Why is my top not coming out flat? It's not meant to get it flat. It's meant to get you those perfectly smooth sides and that perfectly right angled top edge, which you will start to see coming through. You can see it's coming. It's not quite there yet, so we're smoothing on more around the edge. So what we do once we've finished with the Profroster is we go back into that top and we smooth that off by hand with the spatula. It's quite easy to do. It does the first ½ inch to an inch or so around the top, and then you just fill in the middle. And that's perfectly okay, and that is exactly what it's meant to do. And if it does that, you know you've done a good job. And here you can see that pass now, you can see that edge is really coming in there now. And we're gonna have a nice, beautiful right angle on that top edge, which is exactly what we want. Even though I'm going to put a drip on this, I still want a perfectly right angled top. I am obsessed with square edges and getting a really neat top edge. I like neat sides as well. I'm sure a lot of you probably do too, and that's why you're here. So if you do have any questions on the Profroster, guys, how to use it, I will link where to buy it from. You can buy it directly from their website. There are a couple of third-party places you can get them from as well. But I will link their website for you, and they do ship internationally as well. So if you're watching this in different countries, I know quite a few of my subscribers are actually based in the US, but they do ship internationally anyway. Okay, so we are building up again that top edge, because that's always the trickiest part. You'll find maybe a few air pockets around the bottom edge there. You can see I've just swiped a little bit on. And don't worry when you feel like you're taking it backwards a step and it looks messier, because once you run that Profroster around the edge, you will really notice that it's coming up clean, it's coming up smooth. We are really, really starting to see a beautiful cake coming out of this. And it's just about building it up and not giving in and thinking, oh, well, that'll do. Because the more you do it, the smoother it gets. So you've just got to keep going. And like I say, I much prefer doing it in these layers. I find that I get a nice, smooth, perfectly nice finish. I will admit it does take me longer than it does with the ganache plates, but then I've been using ganache plates for 8 years or so. so they are quite a quick method for me. I do also find that the Profroster will give you a perfectly level top. So no matter what your cake is like underneath, if it's not quite level, it doesn't matter. As long as it's straight up the sides or thereabouts, your top will always be level with the Profroster, and I think that's a brilliant selling point, because I don't know about anybody else, I've always struggled with leveling, and I spend ages getting my cakes level with the ganache plates, and then they do still sometimes move. And then you've got to start again, you've got to level it off again. Sometimes you take the top plate off and you find, oh, it's not quite level, and you've got to use ganache to level it off, or you've got to use a knife and cut a little bit away. You don't get that with this. It's perfectly level every time, and I do think that is a wonderful selling point for this product. So if you do struggle with getting your cakes level, definitely buy one. Honestly, I can't advocate enough for this product. I really do love it, and I'm shocked because I ummed and ahed for probably over a year about whether to buy one. So I was like, oh, you know, I use my ganache plates, I've used them for a long time, do I really need it? Is it going to be useful? Is it going to be worth the money? Yes, definitely worth the money. I would rate it every day, and yeah. So here we go. As I was saying before, you don't get that perfectly smooth top. It's not meant to do that, that's fine. So we're smoothing in a bit of ganache here. I probably put a little bit too much on here, which is my own fault. But there we go, smoothing it out. You can see it's coming nice and flat, and that's a pretty simple bit to do. And so then we put the ganache in, we smooth it all out, and then we'll use a hot spatula, not wet, just hot. So we'll dip it in some hot water to really smooth out any imperfections on the top. I mean, this was going to have a drip on it, so it was going to be covered on the top anyway, but we do like to still get it nice and perfect and smooth. But then what we'll do at the end, you can see me there heating up my spatula, and there you can see it just melts any imperfections. It gets it nice and smooth, and then I'm just rubbing it around that top edge to get rid of any lip that we created doing that. And then what we'll do is we'll flip the cake up upside down, we'll pop a little bit of cling film over the top of the cake, and then we would flip it over, remove that ganache plate from the bottom, while at the same time placing the finished board, and then we're all done. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. There are a couple of videos on my TikTok, which I'll link in the description for you, of how to flip the cake over and such, and it's in slow-mo as well. So if you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. If you do already subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see. Thanks for watching. Bye.